The first two Sonic Adventure games are regarded as the best 3D era Sonic games in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. Both games did very well in the market when they were first released back during the Dreamcast era. Now to be honest, I didn't have a Sega Dreamcast growing up, so I missed out on both Sonic Adventure games when they were released during their heyday back in the late 90s, and I didn't get around to playing them until they were ported years later on a Nintendo GameCube. Today, I'm going to be taking a look at Sonic Adventure DX for the Nintendo GameCube. I remember loving this game a lot when I was younger, but does it still hold up today, and is it as good as I remember it to be? Let's find out. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the game's development history, because plenty of other reviewers have already done that. But to give you the Cliff Notes version, the original Sonic Adventure game was released back in 1998 and was a launch title for the Sega Dreamcast. This game is the first adventure-style game, but it wasn't the first 3D Sonic game. Sonic did have a few other 3D games before this one, and for the most part, they were all pretty mediocre at best. But they're necessary to see what didn't work for a 3D Sonic game. And well, that's pretty much it. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the game. Now the story in this game is pretty simple, however it's broken up between 6 playable characters. With the exception of Sonic and Tails, the other characters follow their own path, but in the end, intertwine with our main heroes. The main plot of the game is that Dr. Robotnik is out to conquer the city of Station Square, and to help him with this, he takes control of a creature named Chaos, a creature made out of water, who is able to transform and grow even more powerful as he's fed Chaos Emeralds. And it's up to Sonic and Tails to stop that from happening. And well, that's pretty much it. Like I mentioned before, it's simple but it worked for a Sonic game. Now to add to that, the other characters do have their own stories to tell, and they do give them some relative character growth. Keyword there is some characters. Some. But all around, the game's story was decent for its time. The game is set on an adventure map, otherwise known as hub worlds, and you travel on them to get to the main action stages. I've heard some people complain about them, but personally, I thought they were a great addition. They weren't too big, and they were easy to move around in. They really made me feel like I was on a real adventure. So personally, I really enjoyed them. Speaking of which, the gameplay for the most part is that of a 3D platformer with the exception of one character. Sonic's gameplay is typical speedrunning with platforming action. It's pretty much like the classic games where you race to the end of the stage as fast as you can. However, he has a new move called the homing attack, which he can use to attack enemies and for platforming. The homing attack works fine, but the function feels pretty loose, because it doesn't have a lock-on feature. This can be annoying to deal with sometimes, but for the most part, it's tolerable. Tails' gameplay is the same as Sonic's, where you race through a stage to get to the end. The main difference is you're racing against Sonic, which may sound intimidating, because, well, he's called the Blue Blur for a reason. But luckily, there are air boosters in the stage that Tails can fly through that will give him some short speed boosts to get ahead. He can also attack enemies with his tails, but to be honest, I rarely used it. Knuckles' gameplay is centered around treasure hunting. To complete his levels, you must collect 3 pieces of the Master Emerald that are scattered in different locations of the stage. The pieces are pretty easy to find, but if you need any help, you can touch these glowing orbs that'll lead you in the right direction. To help you find the pieces of the Master Emerald, you have a radar right over here that'll beep and turn colors the closer you get to them. As far as Knuckles' abilities go, he can climb walls, glide through the air, and can punch enemies. Amy's gameplay is that of a traditional 3D platformer. She's able to attack enemies with her hammer that I swear she must store in her vagina or something. She can also use said hammer to do high jumps over obstacles. Along the way, Amy will get chased by Dr. Robotnik's robot named Zero, who will try to capture you. For the most part, you can't destroy him, but you can stun him by hitting him with the hammer. To win, all you need to do is make your way to the end of the stage to reach a balloon that'll fly you to safety. I'll come back to her. E102 Gamma's gameplay is that of a 3D platformer with third-person shooting. You race through levels with a timer that you can build up by shooting the everlasting shit out of everything on sight. At the end of the level, you'll have a boss battle against one of his brothers, who are really no challenge at all. And Big's gameplay is fishing. All you do is sit and fish trying to capture his friend Froggy, who seems to not really like him that much, considering he keeps running away the minute you catch him. Ugh. Yeah, I'll come back to him as well. Each character is able to find upgrade items that'll give them abilities that they couldn't do before. With the exception of Sonic and Big, every character only has 2 upgradable items, while Sonic and Big have 3. For the most part, the abilities come in handy, and in some cases are mandatory, so it's best to get them as you'll need them to complete parts in certain stages. Now the main thing that is wrong with this game is the camera. Holy shit is it bad. Not as bad as some other games, but still pretty bad. The camera tends to get stuck on walls quite a bit, and this is especially a big problem with Sonic. Because Sonic moves so fast, the camera tends to get stuck on walls in certain stages. The camera was a complete nightmare to deal with in the stage The New World. The camera was just a pain in the ass to deal with. But in saying that, the camera is not completely abysmal, and if you're patient, you can work with it. It just seemed that camera issues were a big problem with early 3D games, so I can't really fault them for it. The game also throws in some minigame challenges like the airplane shooter levels, kart racing, and sandboarding, to name a few. They were okay, I guess, though I really didn't care much for the airplane shooting sections, if I had to be honest. But in saying that, they were still pretty fun. Now for the most part, each character controls pretty good. I mean sure, Sonic does feel a little floaty when jumping and performing the homing attack, but it's really not that big of an issue. Tails' gameplay was fun, and Knuckles' gameplay was fun as well. It was a great debut for the treasure hunting gameplay style. And E102 Gamma's gameplay was fun as well. However, I do need to talk about Amy and Big. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Amy is slow as shit. Her movement speed is slow and her top running speed isn't that much better. Playing as her was a complete chore. And it only made me wish I was playing either Sonic or Tails instead. Luckily, she only has 3 stages, so it's not that bad, but still, that didn't make her any more fun to play as. Big's gameplay was freaking boring. I get it. I get that if you know what you're doing, you can complete the stages pretty quickly. But still, why the heck do they think fishing would be a good idea? I can only imagine how a lot of kids must have felt the first time they played this game back in 1998. Again, I do understand that they were trying to experiment with different gameplay styles, but thank God they didn't bring this one back. I mean, if you were to ask me which character I'd rather play as, I choose Amy because, bitching aside, I do like 3D platformers, and if I just relax and ignore her slow-ass movement speed, her gameplay feels like an average 3D platformer. And I mean, at least it doesn't feel like Bubsy 3D. I mean, yeah, it could have been a lot worse. But Big, I just can never get behind, even if you could beat the stages in under a minute. But still, I do understand why the developers put these kind of styles in the game just to experiment, and I don't fault them for it. It's just that in order to unlock the final story, you have to complete all the characters' story campaigns, so that's why it was a little annoying playing some of these characters. But if you're patient, it is doable and tolerable. Aside from all that, for its time, the gameplay was relatively good. And I don't think it's fair to compare it to the later games because this is the first adventure-styled game, so it was bound to have some problems that could have been done better. Now this game does have some boss battles, and it's mostly just Chaos' different forms, but you also fight Dr. Robotnik and some of the playable characters. For the most part, the boss battles are a joke, mainly when you're fighting against other characters. They just freaking stand there most of the time. The Chaos battles are okay, but still relatively simple. The only boss battles that are at the most decent are the final bosses for the characters, especially Sonic's because Dr. Robotnik will pull a dick move and try to take you down with him in one last desperate attempt to defeat you. It totally caught me off guard the first time I played this game. But aside from that, the boss battles in this game were mediocre at best and just sad at worst. The stages in this game were pretty cool, and were so full of variety, from a tropical beach, to an amusement park, to a snowy mountain, and so much more. And camera issues aside, the stages do complement the characters very well. The music in this game is probably one of the best things about the game, but I mean, let's be honest. At this point in time, Sonic games are known to have some of the best music of any video game franchise, and this game was no exception. The music genres were all over the place, from rock, jazz, classical, and some electronic. If I had to pick 5 of my favorite songs, I really enjoyed the songs for Skydeck, Emerald Coast, the boss theme for E102 Gamma's Brothers, and the second part of Red Mountain. But believe me, all the songs are classics, and this extends to the characters' theme songs, which were freaking amazing. The opening theme song, Open Your Heart, is still regarded as one of the most iconic songs in all of the Sonic games, and for good reason too, it's a great song. So yeah, this game's music, loved it, loved everything about it. The voice acting, however, is
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Okay, when I was younger, I thought the voice acting was great, but when I went back to replay this game, it's not as good as I remember it to be. I think that the characters' voices from a tone perspective fit the characters well enough, but the acting is done so poorly. And this went double for Tails, especially Tails.
That's Eggman! I wonder what happened to Sonic. Hey Knuckles! What's up?
Like I said before, the voice acting from a tone perspective is good, but the deliveries leave a lot to be desired. And while I'm on the topic of sound, I have to say that the sound editing is horrible. To be more specific, I'm talking about the background music that plays during cutscenes. Whenever a character comes on screen, the music just cuts out abruptly and automatically starts up the next song. It just sounds terrible, and it would have been better if they gave the songs a simple fade in, fade out transition instead. Aside from that, that's really the only issue I personally had with the sound. Everything else was fine. Now the game does have some replay value. Other than the final story that you can unlock after completing all the other characters' stories, there's also mission mode and time attack challenges if you're into that kind of stuff. Me personally, I didn't bother with them, but again, they're there for those who are interested in that kind of stuff. The game also introduced the Chow Garden, where you get to raise your own little Chow. Honestly, I didn't bother all that much with the Chow Garden in this game, mainly because I played Sonic Adventure 2 first, and I was too used to the advanced features in that game. But it was still cool to see where the Chow got their first appearance. So yeah, for its time, this game had plenty of replay value. So now for the big question, does this game still hold up today? Honestly, I think it does. Despite the awkward camera, I had fun replaying this game. For the first Sonic Adventure style game, it did very well for its time, and with the inclusion of the filled maps, it felt like I was on a real adventure. I mean sure, the game could have done a few things better, but for what it was a rather good debut for the adventure style games, and later games owe this game a lot. That being said, Sonic Adventure DX gets 8 out of 10. Yeah, the game has aged a bit, but for its time, it had great graphics, an amazing soundtrack that still holds up today. And the gameplay, while a little rough around the edges, was still pretty fun. I honestly do think it's a classic. So if you haven't played the game already, and you're open to playing older games, check this game out. I think you'll enjoy it. And well, that concludes my review for Sonic Adventure DX. Stay tuned for my review of the oh so controversial Sonic Adventure 2 coming soon, because believe me folks, I have a lot I want to say about it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more gaming goodness. I'm Decadent Gamer and have a great day. Thanks for watching.